I'm Natasha Coleman, a Minnesota theology professor who is 40 years old. I'm going to tell you about my near-death experience when Jesus revealed to me the startling truth about the 6 most common Christian traditions that have demonic roots. I'm scared that this NDE story will rock the foundations of what many Christians believe, since I have personally witnessed how Satan has permeated Christian traditions over the years, tricking even the most devout believers. Tell me where you're listening from, though, before we get started. Even though we are physically separated, it will be good to feel closer. Remember to like and comment on this tale of a near-death experience as well. On this channel, let's have an open and equitable conversation so that we may all learn from one another. Have fun listening. On October 10th, 2010, this started. I was praying, thinking about the church history lecture I would be giving later that day, and running as usual. It still amazes me how ironic it was that God would totally change the way I thought about that same topic. My run's second mile at 7:40 a.m. was when everything changed. A sharp, excruciating pain shot through my chest and down my left arm. My final thought before passing out was, this can't be happening, as I'm a health-conscious person with no family history of heart issues. I would find out later that I had experienced a catastrophic heart arrest, a widowmaker heart attack, as doctors refer to it. However, my clinical death was not nearly as important as what transpired next. I felt myself distancing myself from my physical body the instant my heart stopped beating. From above, I saw a young jogger locate me, start CPR, and dial 911. Then, however, an extraordinary event occurred. I was drawn into a realm of pure light, if I may use that description. I felt as though I was in a great expanse of living light, more real than anything I had ever encountered on earth, as the physical world vanished. I saw Jesus Christ himself at that point. I was astonished by his appearance, which was very different from the pictures and paintings I had seen growing up. His looks reflected his historical and geographic background, making him look like a Jewish man from the Middle East in the 1st century. Unlike the European-looking Jesus with flowing brown hair that we so frequently see, he had dark hair that was chopped rather short, and his skin was olive-toned and sun-weathered. However, it was his eyes that captured my attention, not his physical attributes. To my astonishment, they were filled with love, knowledge, and grief. His voice reverberated through my body when he spoke. "I've brought you here, Natasha, because my church needs to know the truth," he stated. Over the centuries, Satan has inserted falsehoods into Christian traditions, guiding my people away from genuine devotion and comprehension. I'm going to show you something that you have to share. His presence and the gravity of what he was saying overpowered me. "I am merely a professor," I said to the Lord. "Why me? You have the experience to know these facts and are in a position to impart them." So his smile was a mixture of compassion and resolve. "Everything you've taught will be called into question by what you witnessed today, but keep in mind that the truth will release my people." Abruptly, we found ourselves in what I can only refer to as a celestial time library. Jesus clarified that he will demonstrate to me 6 distinct customs that Satan has exploited to skew Christian doctrine and behavior. He warned that every distortion has a specific function in the enemy's scheme to prevent believers from seeing the whole truth. He showed me the Garden of Eden in his first vision. I imagined Satan as a lovely, cunning creature who was putting up a scheme that would reverberate for millennia, rather than as a cartoon devil with horns and a pitchfork. Jesus remarked, "Notice how the enemy has diverted people's attention from the real problem of disobedience and trust to the type of fruit, creating the apple myth." I saw the real scene as Eve reached for a fruit that didn't resemble an apple at all. Jesus clarified that Satan has trivialized the seriousness of the original sin by using the apple tradition, which originates from a straightforward Latin word misunderstanding between malum evil and malus apple. He deflects attention from the true problem, the decision to mistrust and disobey God, by concentrating on the apple. He demonstrated to me the profound impact of this ostensibly harmless custom. People overlook the larger spiritual lesson when they are preoccupied with the apple. Since the fruit's identity was unimportant, it was never disclosed. The enemy is aware that people will miss the important lessons about obedience, trust, and the repercussions of questioning God's word if he can divert their attention to trivial matters. I felt obligated to convey every detail of what Jesus showed me about how Satan has perverted these Christian traditions for his own ends, even though what he revealed next regarding the three wise men tradition would prove to be even more disturbing. When Jesus led me to the next epiphany, the scene in front of me drastically changed. He remarked, "Watch how Satan has distorted the story of the Magi," and I was dumbfounded by what I witnessed next. I saw a larger group of learned men traveling toward Bethlehem, rather than the well-known three kings on camels that we see in innumerable nativity scenes. Jesus clarified that these were the Magi, astronomers and sages from the East, most likely, from Babylon or Persia. Here, Satan used a subtle yet effective trick. He demonstrated to me how this custom had been tainted over time. Take note of how the enemy has misrepresented this story, my daughter. Three persons who were not kings are never mentioned in the Bible. These were erudite individuals who researched old predictions and the stars. Satan achieved a number of goals by inventing the tale of three kings, Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar. Then Jesus showed me something that completely shocked me. The adversary is aware that people are less inclined to look for themselves in the scriptures when they blindly embrace traditions that were created by humans. One of his best tactics is this tendency to accept human traditions as biblical truth. As the real event played out, I saw a bigger party of Magi arrive at a house rather than a stable, where Jesus was already a small child rather than a baby. Take note of how this differs from what is traditionally depicted. He said that everything had been misrepresented, including the time, the venue, and even the number of guests. He demonstrated to me the wide-ranging effects of this lie. Satan created a diversion from the predictions that these gifts represented, when he persuaded people to concentrate on the number 3 just because there were 3 different kinds of gifts. The myrrh represented my impending sacrifice, the frankincense my deity, and the gold my monarchy. However, how many of my kids do you think comprehend these complex symbols? Jesus' attitude became even more solemn as the scene changed once more. Now observe how the opposition twisted Mary Magdalene's account. Perhaps the most unsettling revelation to date was what he showed me next. I saw Mary Magdalene for who she really was, a respectable woman from the town of Magdala, not the prostitute of popular culture. Jesus clarified that Satan's twisted version of her story was especially nefarious, since it confused 3 distinct biblical women: Mary Magdalene, the wicked lady who anointed my feet, and Mary of Bethany. His fabrication has undermined the testimony of one of my most devoted followers. I witnessed events from Mary Magdalene's real life, including her being the first person to witness the resurrection, her devoted devotion to Jesus, her financial support of his ministry, and her release from 7 demons rather than prostitution. Jesus claimed that the enemy is aware of the witness's strength. He tried to undermine one of the most significant accounts of my resurrection by tarnishing Mary Magdalene's image with unfounded charges of prostitution. This was not an accident. Rather, it was a deliberate attempt to discredit my account of my resurrection. I was struck hard by the truth. How many women had been impacted by this myth throughout history? What impact had this misrepresentation had on the church's perception of women in leadership roles? But why has this deception lasted so long? I said to the Lord. Jesus' answer was deep. Satan is aware that he might deter others from completely embracing their calling by twisting the tales of my devoted followers. The life of Mary Magdalene shows that spiritual deliverance and dedication, rather than just moral reform, are the keys to full transformation. Instead of emphasizing the potential for total spiritual development, the enemy would rather that people concentrate on a tale of sexual transgression. He showed me moments from Mary Magdalene's real ministry, including her bravery in remaining at the cross when most others had run away, her resolve to decorate his body with spices for burial, and her delight at being the first to witness his resurrection. Jesus claimed that the lady he selected to be the first person to see his resurrection had had her testimony contaminated for ages by the deceit of Satan. Then I gasped when Jesus revealed something. He demonstrated to me how the enemy had purposefully spread this version of Mary Magdalene's story throughout history in order to restrict women's roles within the church and fabricate stories about salvation. The enemy is aware that people misunderstand the real meaning of Mary Magdalene's story, that I can free anyone from spiritual slavery, not only moral failure, when they think she was a prostitute. Jesus' look intensified as the scene changed once more. He then proceeded to demonstrate to you how Satan has conflated genuine celebration of my birth with pagan worship by exploiting the custom of December 25th. Everything I believed to be true about Christmas would be upended by what he revealed to me next, including the actual time of his birth and Satan's involvement in creating the custom of December 25th. But before he could say anything further, I experienced an odd tugging feeling. "You have a limited amount of time," Jesus replied, "but you still need to examine how the enemy has distorted perceptions of my appearance and the actual characteristics of angels. Keep in mind all I've demonstrated to you regarding these initial 3 lies. They are only the start." Jesus started to disclose the truth about the December 25th custom, while the sight in front of me changed once more. The next thing I saw was really startling. Jesus stated, "Pay close attention as I demonstrate to you how Satan appropriated my birth celebration for his own ends." Pagan celebrations, especially the celebration of Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birth of the unconquered sun, were depicted before me in images from ancient Rome. Jesus pointed out that the enemy has used the Roman Empire to combine the celebration of my birth with pagan sun worship. I saw how early church officials formally declared December 25th to be Christmas, especially under Pope Julius I around 350 AD. Jesus revealed that the enemy had a very sophisticated plan. He encouraged the church to make concessions and combine the truth with pagan customs rather than openly opposing Christianity. Satan took advantage of the fact that Roman civilization was firmly rooted in the winter solstice celebration. I was astounded when he revealed to me the precise moment of his birth. In a much warmer season, I noticed shepherds in the fields, keeping an eye on their flocks at night. Jesus claimed that my birth most likely took place during your fall season, perhaps during the Feast of Tabernacles. Consider this. Would shepherds be out in the fields on chilly December evenings? John 1:14's statement that the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us took on new significance as the scriptural connection became immediately apparent. Jesus demonstrated to me how Satan had gradually distanced the celebration of his birth from its prophetic importance and rich Hebrew background by using the date of December 25th. Jesus added, "The enemy is aware that he could incorporate aspects of sun worship into Christian practice by scheduling my birth celebration on a pagan festival date." This was about tainting the holy worship of God with heathen practices, not merely about the date. I witnessed the historical ramifications of this falsehood. Throughout church history, this pattern of combining divine knowledge with heathen behaviors would recur frequently. Jesus clarified that this is the reason Paul cautioned against following the trends of this world. The distinction between the sacred and the profane has always been a tactic used by Satan. The situation changed once more, and Jesus confronted the erroneous representations of his bodily attributes, which were yet another enormous deceit. I was even more shocked by what I witnessed next. Jesus showed me how creative representations had changed over time, saying, "Look at how Satan has reconstructed my image." I observed how his appearance had been methodically Europeanized, changing from that of a Middle Eastern Jewish guy in the 1st century to something very different. Jesus clarified that the enemy's approach was especially cunning in this instance. He achieved multiple goals at once by building a false image of me that mirrored European standards of power and attractiveness. He put a wall between me and non-European peoples, distanced me from my Jewish roots, and gave me a fictitious sense of cultural superiority. I marveled as Jesus revealed to me his actual terrestrial form, which was very dissimilar from the well-known monuments and paintings. His features reflected his time and region, and he had been a normal 1st century Jewish guy from Palestine. He reminded me that only Isaiah 53:2 has a prophecy about my appearance. He lacked the majesty and beauty to draw us to him, and there was nothing about his appearance that made us want him. Jesus went on to say, "Satan is aware that if he can trick people into concentrating on a phony physical representation of me, they may miss the real me. Because of this illusion, some people have broken the 1st commandment by worshiping an image of God instead of the real one." The last revelation, about angels, came next. Perhaps the most shocking of all was what Jesus revealed to me about these celestial beings. Jesus remarked, "Look how Satan has changed the perception of angels from strong, frequently terrifying warriors and messengers to small, romantic characters. Angels, who are genuinely amazing and occasionally terrible, creatures stood before me. They didn't look much like the adorable cherubs found in popular art." Jesus clarified that the enemy's goal in this situation was to undermine knowledge of spiritual warfare. He has concealed angels' actual identity as strong spiritual beings, involved in cosmic conflict by transforming them into innocuous ornamental forms with wings and halos. I saw the real cherubim and seraphim. In contrast to the adorable infant angels we frequently see, the cherubim had 2 wings, while the seraphim had 6 wings, 2 of which they used to cover their faces, 2 to cover their feet, and 2 to fly. It was a stark contrast to common representations. Jesus recalled that throughout the Bible, when angels appeared to people, their first words were frequently, "Fear not." These were strong fighters and messengers of the Most High God, not adorable infants with wings. In an attempt to keep my people from seeing the realities of spiritual warfare, Satan has sought to conceal this fact. He demonstrated to me how this deception had real-world repercussions, as it caused many Christians to undervalue the significance of angelic ministering in God's kingdom and the gravity of spiritual warfare. According to Jesus, the enemy is aware that if he can persuade people to consider angels as only ornamental, they will not comprehend the strength and authority that they may wield in spiritual combat under my name. That similar tugging feeling intensified as these disclosures came to an end. Jesus, however, gave me last instructions before I left that I will never forget. "You have to tell these truths, Natasha," he continued. "Many of my children have embraced these lies without inquiry because the enemy has so expertly constructed them. However, the moment has come to expose the truth." "But won't people oppose these disclosures?" I prayed. "These customs are very deeply embedded." "Many people are hungry for truth, but some will resist," he said. "Recall that the goal is not to denounce those who have adhered to these customs. They just had no idea. The goal is to guide them to the truth in a loving manner. These lies have been employed by the enemy to sow discord, cut off individuals from their spiritual roots, and impair their comprehension of spiritual warfare. But they will be freed by the truth." I felt like I was being dragged back all of a sudden. Jesus' final words to me were, "Remember, these lies may appear innocuous, but they have led many away from genuine worship and understanding. Without compromising, but with compassion, share what you've witnessed." The next thing I knew, paramedics were working over me and I was having trouble breathing. James, my husband, was there with tears in his eyes. My understanding of Christian traditions was completely altered when I discovered that I had been clinically dead for 7 minutes. According to the medical staff, I had a miraculous encounter. Outside of a hospital, the survival rate for the kind of cardiac arrest I had is usually less than 10%, and those who do survive frequently suffer from neurological impairment. However, I returned with a mission from Jesus himself and complete clarity. However, it didn't end there. On November 15, 2018, 2 years after my initial near-death encounter, I was reunited with that recognizable world of unadulterated light. It wasn't a heart attack this time. During a normal medical procedure, I experienced a serious adverse reaction to a medicine. I left my physical body behind once more, but this time I felt a strong sense of homecoming rather than fear. Just as powerful as I recalled, Jesus was waiting for me. There was warmth and knowledge in his smile. "You've been faithful to what I showed you, Natasha," he said. "I want to now demonstrate to you the effect of speaking these truths." All of a sudden, we were traveling across what appeared to be streams of space and time. "See how the truth has started to release my people," he remarked. Scenes from the previous 2 years, some of which I recognized and some of which I didn't, were before us. I pictured myself in my hospital bed scrawling down what he had shown me when we first met. "You see," he replied, "I strengthened you to accurately document these even in your weakness." After that, I saw how my family responded when I initially revealed these facts. I witnessed my pupils awakening to a deeper biblical understanding, my colleagues' shocked looks changing to acknowledge the truth, and my husband James's initial disbelief converting into comprehension. "Some people still have doubts," I said. "Lord, I'm making this up," some claim. He answered in a kind but forceful manner. "Recall what Peter said. We didn't listen to well-crafted narratives. Like my disciples, you are sharing what you have seen and heard. Examine the fruit." He gave me examples of unanticipated effects, such as pastors reevaluating their doctrine, academics finding historical evidence, and regular people being released from religious servitude. I seen individuals from several nations reading translations, of my testimonies, their eyes wide open to the truth. But Jesus said, "Look more closely. See what the enemy attempted to stop by keeping these lies up to date." Then I realized that every custom he had revealed wasn't merely a straightforward misunderstanding. I observed how the story of the apple had trivialized the gravity of sin and disobedience. A fairy tale account of my birth had been crafted by the Three Kings tradition, diverting attention from its prophetic significance. Numerous women had been harmed and their ministry had been restricted by the myth of Mary Magdalene. Pagan influences in worship had been made possible by the December 25th practice. Cultural impediments to faith had been established by the European image of Jesus. People were oblivious to the reality of spiritual warfare because of the adorable angel images. Jesus added that these barriers have started to fall down because of your obedience in spreading these truths. However, more work has to be done. After that, he showed me something that made me cry. These revelations were being shared with his congregation by an older pastor, whom I knew from a conference where I had given a speech. He claimed that I had preached traditions for 50 years without challenging them. However, I now realize that we need to go back to biblical truth. Jesus clarified that this is the reason these revelations are significant. Every individual who is set free from these lies comes back to me with a more genuine relationship, a deeper knowledge, and a purer faith. Jesus then put his shoulder there. You have frequently questioned if it is truly important to expose these customs. You see, the enemy's lies were deliberately designed to put obstacles in the way of my people's access to the whole truth. But these obstacles are coming down one by one. Lord, what shall I do next? I inquired. Go on telling what you've seen, he said. Some people will object. Although the enemy's lies are well established, many people are eager to learn the truth. Keep in mind that you are not criticizing anyone who adhered to these customs. You're assisting them in discovering truth-based freedom. I sensed the familiar tugging starting. Tell them that I love my church too much to abandon them in deceit, Jesus added as a final thing. These insights are meant to restore, not to condemn. My people's time to worship in truth and spirit has arrived. This time when I'm back in my body, I'm even more determined to spread these facts. Everything from my initial interaction had been validated by this second event, which also made it clear to me how critical it is to keep exposing these lies. My clinical death was recorded in the medical records for 3 minutes this time. However, the timing was ideal. It was just what I needed to witness the results of sharing these insights and to be validated in their significance. Yes, these customs may appear innocuous at first glance to everyone viewing this testimony, but as Jesus demonstrated to me in both of our encounters, they are anything but. They are skillfully constructed lies that have eroded our spiritual awareness and put up obstacles to sincere faith. Take a look at these things yourself. Read the Bible, learn about the past, but above all, ask the Holy Spirit to lead you to the whole truth. Jesus told me that he loves his church too much to be dishonest with us. The issue is whether we'll accept the truth when he tells it.